All right, welcome back. I hope you found those abstracts very illuminating and informative. What abstracts did you read? What did you learn from them? I do hope that so many of you were able to make some new connections during the abstract poster showcase. We have one final abstract spotlight to present from the 2023 Global Call for Scientific Abstracts. This one, hands up for those who love football. My family does. My mother and my husband and the children and I are often just caught watching for support. But we understand that football is a pathway to diffusing tensions and rebuilding cohesion in families. So imagine in societies as well, particularly those that are in conflict. So this next one, we are going to be presented with football as a pathway to diffusing tensions and rebuilding cohesion in conflict communities. Let's see.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Ngoram Banlanjo. I'm a lecturer in the University of Bamenda, Northwest region of Cameroon. I'm going to be presenting my abstract titled, Football as a Pathway to Diffusing Tensions and Rebuilding Cohesion in Conflict Communities. Our study is guided by the assumption that football is one among the pragmatic means of attaining sustainable peace and human well-being. We actually set out in this study to investigate the role that football plays in reducing tensions and enhancing cohesion among different communities that are living in conflict. The context of our study is the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon, which have been plunged into a socio-political crisis since 2016. As part of efforts to diffuse tension within these communities, the inhabitants often engage in football, not only for diffusing tensions, but also for the purpose of amusement, entertainment, relieving stress, enhancement of talents, promoting social cohesion, and attaining mental well-being. The methods that we used for this study, we employed the sequential exploratory design. Our target population comprised the 3 municipalities within the city council area of Bamenda. Qualitative data were collected using key informant interviews, focus group discussions, and observation checklists from a sample of 50 persons purposefully selected. The emerging trends obtained from qualitative data enabled us to develop appropriate constructs for the questionnaire. The administration of the questionnaire is still in process, as we have projected collect from 400 persons randomly selected from the football teams and fan clubs involved in this study. We did an in-depth thematic content analysis of qualitative data and the quantitative data. We shall use the SPSS software for our analysis of quantitative data. With respect to our preliminary findings, our findings revealed that community football games help to diffuse tensions, to reduce stress, to build resilience, and enhance social cohesion. We also found that football in these conflict communities helps to promote values like tolerance, communion, sharing, love, charity, compassion, and kindness. In addition, we found that football serves as a recreational platform, animating and bridging divided communities. Since the games often take place during the imposed lockdowns, when there is no circulation and no economic activities going on in communities, it provides opportunities for the population to share their stress and to overcome boredom and a sedentary life. During the games, fan clubs promote music and dancing, providing interesting experiences an occasion to exercise, to laugh, to sing, and this enhances the mental and physical health of the population. Football activities were also found to promote mental well-being by relieving stress and helping participants develop resilience in the face of social tensions arising from conflict. In conclusion, we say that football is a very attractive game to children, to adolescents and adults. Most people in Bamenda consider football as an activity that gainfully and meaningfully occupies them and renders them beautiful. We argue that football is a silent advocate for resilience, as this is the only activity that occupies people during those times within the context of our crisis. We therefore recommend replicating the approach of this study in other communities to boost social and mental well-being. Thank you for your kind attention.
All right, so that was football as a pathway to diffusing tensions and rebuilding cohesion in conflict communities. I'll never look at another football game the same. I've got new eyes now. We've come to the last session of the 2023 Global Flourishing Conference. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend your time with us. I hope that you have enjoyed learning and engaging with others in the field of flourishing, research, and innovation, that we can all reflect and take something away from the day. And for me, the word and the theme that resonates is that depolarization and gratitude as well. Those were so deeply, deeply meaningful. And thank you to all the panelists and the moderators. So this next and final session is titled Planetary Flourishing, Inspiring Science, Wisdom, and Action. Our moderator for this segment is Yuria Kelidwin. Yuria is an Indigenous scholar. She's part of the contemplative faculty at the University of California, Berkeley, and advocate for Indigenous peoples and Mother Earth rights at the United Nations. In this session, speakers will explore what is required to create a future of planetary flourishing by elucidating the causes and conditions that affect planetary well-being. They will also discuss how to build ecological solutions and policy. We look forward to your deliberations. Over to you, Yuria.
Thank you, Reddy. And wakola walik yu unta labay behunta ekbe yu unta talashe ayinel tak inal klumkinal tik tak pisil tik. Welcome all relatives. That was my Indigenous Maya Celta language, with which I'm thanking you for your attention and presence as we inquire about ways to cultivate, cooperate relationships, and re-envision innovations and institutions to meet our planetary challenges. And the traditions of our indigenous peoples of the world inspired this last conversation to seek action for belonging, action for our Mother Earth, whom we all call home. Planetary flourishing is the recognition of the interconnectedness that binds us to Mother Earth's plurality. It's rooted in an ecocentric approach, and so this panel discussion aims to challenge us to view our home planet not as a resource, but as the core living participant in the relationships that shape our experience. This fascinating panel is very wide in its scope, since we are gathering insights from spirituality, the arts, sciences, and humanities. So what else would you want for a conversation on how our human capacity for kindness, compassion, can influence a positive culture of flourishing relationships for the well-being of our living planet? So let's dive in to understand planetary flourishing and what it can manifest in our shared future. As I've insisted for many, many years, there is no human flourishing without planetary flourishing first. And we're going to begin our journey drawing inspiration from the exquisite insights of Efrain Bartolomé's esteemed poet laureate and recipient of the National Award for Merit in Forestry and Wildlife from the government of Mexico for his poetic contribution to promoting awareness of nature as a sacred space. Efrain is a prolific author of more than 25 books, whose work has been included in the most significant anthologies of contemporary poetry worldwide. And Efrain will be performing a few pieces for us today in Spanish, and he has asked that I first read an English translation of his poem Invocación, or Invocation. And I'll start with that. Invocation. Speak for me, tongue of my forebears. Keep me from lying. Keep me from ever beguiling about the coursing of my blood, about the vagaries of my heart. In you I put my trust. In your wisdom burnished by time, like the nuggets of gold neath the patient waters of limpid rivers. Let me question before I believe. Let me light up words by which to walk in the night. Keep me from talking of what I have not seen, of what I have not glimpsed with the eyes of my soul, of what I have not lived, what I have not touched, of what I have not bitten into. Don't allow me to make music foreign to my voice or my fingers. Music not traveled in the air before reaching my ear. Music not played on the blind harp of my heart. Don't let me buzz in the void like the bees at the window pane of night. Don't let me be silent when I sense danger or when I strike gold. Never a verse, let me insist, that has not shocked the dark clam of my heart. Speak for me, tongue of my forebears, mother and beloved. Don't let me fail you. Don't let me lie. Don't let me fall. Don't let me. Don't. Thank you. And now we welcome Efrain to please read his work in Spanish, and to all attendees to follow along with the English translation on the screen. Thank you, Efrain, so much for being here with us. And the mic is yours.
I thank the organization of the Global Flourishing Conference for their kind invitation. Thank you very much, Dr. Yuria Selidwen, for her splendid reading and for considering me for this event. Thank you, Mahira Tijuana, for all your attention. It's a honor for this poet from Mexico to be before this planetary audience. Thank you all. Invocación. Lengua de mis abuelos, habla por mí. No me dejes mentir. No me permitas nunca ofrecer gato por liebre sobre los movimientos de mi sangre, sobre las variaciones de mi corazón. En ti confío, en tu sabiduría pulida por el tiempo, como el oro en pepita bajo el agua paciente del claro río. Permíteme dudar para creer. Permíteme encender unas palabras para caminar de noche. No me dejes hablar de lo que no he mirado, de lo que no he tocado con los ojos del alma, de lo que no he vivido, de lo que no he palpado, de lo que no he mordido. No permitas que salga por mi boca o mis dedos una música falsa, una música que no haya venido por el aire hasta tocar mi oreja, una música que antes no haya tañido el arpa ciega de mi corazón. No me dejes zumbar en el vacío como los abejorros ante el vidrio nocturno. No me dejes callar cuando sienta el peligro o cuando encuentre oro. Nunca un verso. Permíteme insistir que no haya despepitado la almeja oscura de mi corazón. Habla por mí, lengua de mis abuelos, madre y mujer. No me dejes faltarte, no me dejes mentir, no me dejes caer, no me dejes, no. Una piedra. Miro la piedra. Con la mirada hago una sajadura sobre su limpia corteza mineral. La abro con otras manos como si fuera un fruto. Al interior, paisajes conocidos, remotos mundos familiares, parentescos ocultos. Hay ancestros aquí y no los veo, los siento. Hay elementos de amor en esta piedra. La cierro, la cicatrizo con otra mirada. Esto ha ocurrido. Un parpadeo, solo un puente fugaz entre miradas. Vuelvo a mirar la piedra. Siento su peso. La arrojo entre las rocas del jardín. Deslumbra el alto día. Coloquio con la gran madre. Trazo sobre la tierra una inscripción con cal y le pregunto cosas. Madre, le digo, ahora que nadie puede oírnos, escúchame y respóndeme. Estoy solo y acaricio en mi boca estas preguntas lisas como piedras de río. Las pronuncio en voz alta como si fueran algo más que dudas, como si fueran diamantes o zafiros o rubíes enormes o esmeraldas magníficas brillando contra el sol. ¿Qué soy? ¿Cuál es mi origen? ¿Por qué, si me gesté en tu vientre, me lanzaste a la nada? ¿Cuál mi destino? Y tú me miras y me das lecciones. En la piedra, en el árbol, en el molusco y en el pez, en la concha marina y en los petrificados huesos del gliptodonte y el mamut, en las estampas de aves y mamíferos que las piedras guardaron y han tenido en tu vientre nichos de eternidad. Y te huelo, te toco, Te miro responder, te saboreo y oigo tu voz que nadie puede oír sino la oreja del alma. Vienes de mí, te parí con ayuda de las edades, eres parte de mí y volverás a mí. Soy tu destino. Aprende mientras tanto. Mío es el misterio, tuyo el conocimiento. Mía es la eternidad y tuyo el tiempo. Míos los cambios lentos del paisaje, pero también la tumba y la catástrofe. Míos los cataclismos y el desastre, el beso de las aguas, las caricias del aire y el abrazo violento del viento y su abrasión. Las venas transparentes de los ríos, el musgo y el desierto, la cima y la montaña, el geyser y el volcán, la caverna y el cristal, el ámbar y la mina, y la falda de selva que me cubre, y la roca que altera la paciencia del tiempo y hace reír a la eternidad. Tuyos los cambios repentinos, las preguntas y el riesgo. Y mi alma lo sabe. Generaciones van, generaciones vienen, y nuestra Santa Madre nunca es la misma, porque los ojos de las generaciones nunca han sido los mismos, aunque una generación y otra generación y otra generación no sean otra cosa sino invisibles capas de la hojarasca humana, hermosamente ardidas, limpiamente apagadas, ferozmente oprimidas entre las duras capas de la tierra. Y me atrevo a decir, con una voz más baja que el silencio, soy tu creación más alta. He nacido en tu seno, en tu fecundo vientre donde se acuna el mar, donde palpita el vientre menor de la semilla. Me como la brillante verdura de las eras, devoro a mis hermanos, me alimento de carne y maravilla, pero siempre lo supe, una vez y otra vez y otra vez, he de tornar al polvo original para nacer de nuevo frente al rostro del sol, hasta que el sol se enfríe y se encienda en el cielo, temblorosa de estrellas. Otra interrogación. Abismos. Mira la piedra. Te hablará la tierra. La piedra es el espejo en que se encierra la humana historia, lo que fue y ha sido, y lo que habrá de ser, y lo que he sido. Verás la convulsión, el tajo, el sismo, verás el lago dulce y el paisaje, la lenta lejanía y el ultraje que produjo el artero cataclismo. Mira el cráter, la cima, la llanura, mira el mar, la montaña, el espejismo que dibujan el tiempo y el espacio. Oirás tu corazón que se apresura y mirarás el rostro del abismo y callarás y te hundirás despacio en el acantilado de ti mismo. Gracias.
Hola, Sukamati, gracias. Thank you so much, Efrain. What a burst of imagery and emotion, and of course, insights coming and echoing into this panel that we gather here together. And it's a beautiful way to transition now into this discussion on what is planetary flourishing. And I'm joined by three distinguished scientists and practitioners. We have Breed Way, who is an author and the director of our Circle at Stanford Psychiatry, a research and action initiative focused on community-minded interventions for resilience, climate leadership, and emotional well-being in Stanford School of Medicine. Also, Brit's postdoctoral training in planetary health has made her an influential science communicator about staying sane within the climate crisis. We have also with us Father Jostrom Kuritadan, who is Chair of Philosophy of Science and Director of the Institute of Social and Political Sciences at the Salesian Pontifical University in Rome. Father Josh also serves in the ecology section of the Vatican Dicastery for promoting integral human development. And we have Marcelo Gleiser, who is the Appleton Professor of Natural Philosophy and Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Dartmouth. As an author, Marcelo explores the historical, religious, and philosophical roots of science and the future of our project as a civilization. He's also the 2019 Templeton Prize laureate, so he's family to this Templeton community, an honor that he shares with none other than Mother Teresa, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So we have an extraordinary panel, along with the beautiful, powerful reading of Ephraim. So I would love to engage in this conversation and start with this inquiry. Also, please, to tell us a little bit about how beginning with poetry, which is a very different way of embodying experience, both bringing the imagination also with the mind and deep into the planet. How does Ephraim readings touch each of your fields of exploration? And we start with Brit.
Thank you, Yuria. It's a delight to be here with you all. And Ephraim, that was an exquisite reading. And I really appreciate the question to kick us off. I think beginning with poetry, it helps to ground us and center us in a psychosocial spiritual realm by using the arts to introduce the question of what is planetary flourishing. It's not enough for us human beings to have health as we typically describe it with a biomedical model of physical and mental health. I think planetary flourishing really helps us see that we need to be in alignment with spiritual health. And an aspect of that means being able to touch wonder and awe and complexity and humility all at once. And what tool better than poetry do we have to enable that?
Beautiful insights. Thank you so much as we explore wonder and awe. Father Josh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Yuri, and thanks to the Templeton Foundation for bringing us together and for choosing such an appropriate theme, flourishing. And I join Brit and all of us, I'm sure Marcel also, to thank Ephraim. You know, when I was listening to his beautiful words, an expression that came over to me, you know, several times was about this dance of life expressing through Ephraim, you know, from the cosmic dust to the conscious beings we are. So I think poetry takes us to a greater depth, you know. We begin to see the world differently. And along with the dance, a second thing that resonated with me was this feeling of being at home, that Earth is our common home. And as he also mentioned, Yuri, at the beginning, that we cannot flourish unless the entire home flourishes. It's also assuming responsibility when the weaker members of our common family suffer, be it human, be it biotic, when other creatures suffer, when my sisters and brothers suffer, I feel the pain. And so these were the two things that came to me listening to the words of Ephraim, and again, this sense of wonder about the dance of life, and that it resonated that we need to return home, that our homelessness, we need to cast it away and just be what we are. So in the poetry, don't lie. We don't need to lie. In our home, we don't need to lie. We are just what we are. And we can dance with life. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, dear Father Josh. Yes. How can we allow that dance of life to be at home, to feel at home, and us in there? Dear Marcelo.
Well, first, Yuria, thanks for having us together. I think that's a wonderful opportunity for different ways of thinking to actually try to bring some clarity to each other and to everybody that is with us into this fundamental topic, which is our survival as a species in a world that is sick because to a large extent to us. And I thought Ephraim's poetry was so powerful and beautiful. And if I had one word that could associate what I felt when I heard his words is belonging. And I love the word belonging because if you split it, it's about being and longing. And I think that his poetry is precisely about these two things. We are with the world. We do not exist without the world. We are not just with the world, but we are the world. And we long for these deeper explanations of our origins, right? The questions that he asked time and that he asked the Gran Madre, which I think it's wonderful. And that is what planetary flourishing, to my mind, is all about, is for us to create an emotional and experiential, and yes, also intellectual awareness of our belonging to this magnificent planet.
Oh, Marcelo, I love how you put belonging as being and longing, and then bringing together the three of you, being and longing for that dance of life, to be in awe and wonder in our shared home. Like how wonderful way to really describe or define what planetary flourishing is. And then that also brings us to the inquiries, as Ephraim was saying. Ours are the inquiries, right? And then the searching, the seeking, the moving forward. And so what is the difference between planetary flourishing and also how is that distinct from addressing the climate change emergency? Starting with Britt, yeah.
Sure. I really love the way that the Planetary Health Alliance tells us that the task now is not to simply address climate change, it's to address everything change, because our human behaviors are now impeding with land transformation, a sixth mass extinction, biodiversity, water, soil fertility, food security issues, and so on. And so we're in this moment of polycrisis as a result of the anthropogenic project. And to be able to appreciate that together as something much greater and grander than just addressing climate change is crucial. But I think that at the root of all of these problems comes a realization that we must move from domination-based systems to partnership-based systems. And anthropologists have identified how many cultures are either one or the other. And in industrialized nations, we see the dominant world order where typically, yes, humans are seen as superior to nature, which they extract and try to bend into shapes that they like, or men are superior over other genders, and white people are superior over Black and Indigenous people of color due to racist ideologies, and so on. All of these seeds of trauma, which percolate through generations, need to be addressed by shifting to mutually supportive ways of relating, which of course many Indigenous cultures have been upholding and practicing and safeguarding through time, which is why it makes so much sense to center Indigenous knowledge in conversations of planetary flourishing. And I think that in order for us to be able to do this together, we also need to be able to call out the assumptions of modernity that many of us have been steeped in order to look at ways of intervening and shifting to something healthier, more holistic, more mutualistic, more in line with these concepts of interbeing, stepping into our interconnection with the greater web of life. And there's a scholar named Carlos Sanchez Pimienta who I think identifies these ills of modernity well. And so I'll just offer a few. These assumptions include the separation between humans and nature, the disengagement between the sacred and the human, the entitlement to control nature to pursue human objectives, the desire for engineering progress through science and technology, a linear understanding of time that prefers the new, a view of reality that privileges things over relationships, the self-assigned role of science as the best knowledge form, the belief that knowledge and agency only come from humans as opposed to the more than human world in all of our relations, and the self-assigned superiority of modern humans in relation to the other. And so how can we speak to each other about these assumptions of modernity in order to ideate collectively ways of bringing about other ways of knowing and being, which do promote planetary flourishing at this time of really deeply reckoning with this as an issue of survival and also a way of reintroducing morality in ways in which we move through the world.
What a rich response, dear Britt. And pretty much you encapsulated the difference between Western scientific focus and Indigenous sciences centeredness in all relationships. And I love also how you insist in the changes that we need to be doing at a broad spectrum. So not only centering on climate, but really move from domination to partnerships. And how do we do that right? From trauma to healing. And then how do we move through those partnerships, but through a process of accountability that brings reparations, that brings forgiveness, and that brings then later on a possibility of healing and growth as a community. Please, Father Josh, continuing with this question, the distinction between planetary flourishing and climate change.
Yeah, no, thank you, Yuri. Just enjoying our conversation. I would say two things. First of all, connecting with climate, just as you mentioned, and also very appropriate as we know the COP is beginning in Dubai. And I would say, I would connect climate in this way, that for life to flourish, we need conditions for life to flourish. And on the planet, climate is an important factor. And through Marcelo, who is an astronomer, and I also teach cosmology. I mean, when we look at how Earth became a home for life, over 4.5 billion years, and like in a garden, we have, over millions of years, the right climate was created. And we know we are between two glacial epochs, and which began around 10, 12,000 years ago. And we had, the stable, what they call the long summer. And all that was possible thanks to the ideal climate we have had. And unfortunately, what is happening, also going back to Ephraim, it struck me listening to him also to discern a sense of pain that the climate crisis is causing immense suffering. It's affecting food security, whether it's drought, people suffer famine, and it's also affecting our health. And just today, there was a very important report that came out saying that out of 8 million people who died due to pollution, environmental pollution, 5.1 million die due to the use of fossil fuels. Also, when we remember, we spend 5 trillion for health disease, for cardiac diseases, all caused by fossil fuels. This folly that we are endangering our own health, that we are not allowing life to flourish. So food security, health, migration, so sorry to see people having to leave their homes, So climate in a way, highlights very well the negative conditions, the present climate crisis that don't allow life to flourish. So that's my first reflection. The second, building on what Britt said, I think the key is we have ruptured relationships. I mean, her words were in a way music to my ears because I did my PhD on the philosophical roots of the ecological crisis and modernity. And sort of these three, Descartes and Bacon and the entire modern worldview, that the anthropocentric belief that we are the center, then a mechanistic conception of the natural world is just matter to be exploited, resource, and this metaphysical dualism. So this separation that we have created. And the words of Albert Einstein come to my mind, which I put at the beginning of this, and it was published by Cambridge scholars a few years ago. I quoted Albert Einstein that we cannot solve a problem with the same mentality, with the same thinking that created it in the first place. So we need to, expose that worldview that has brought us to this situation, this crisis, and then rebuild, heal these relationships. So it's also an opportunity. So yeah, these are my two reflections, Yuria. Thank you.
Absolutely, dear Father Josh. Yes. How do we change these conditions, right? How we do create life to flourish from suffering to relationships? I sense, I hear the echoing, the coming, the transitioning, the creating that change together by also changing our narratives, right? Our way of thinking, our ontologies, to ontologies of community. Dear Marcelo, what would be your responses?
Yes, so it's wonderful that I'm speaking after Britt and Father Josh, because that way I can reflect a little longer and learn from their words. And I would say that those topics resonate a lot with what I've been writing and thinking recently, which is you mentioned the word narrative, right? And we have created a story of who we are, humans, for the last, since the beginning of the agrarian civilization, right? So about 10,000 years ago, we started to create a story whereby nature became an object that we could manipulate and we could use in any way we wanted in order to further our own progress, right? And this notion that our progress is disentangled from the natural world and from the resources that we are always using from the natural world. And the problem I see is that we have been so successful on this enterprise, in this material enterprise. We created all this technological and scientific knowledge that we have used to push forward this idea that we are above nature, that we can actually control things, that we started to believe it. We started to say, hey, look at us. We're the best. We can make tunnels across mountains. We can dig holes underground and find fossil fuels that will power our civilization forward. And look at the advances of medicine, which are wonderful. But the point here is that all of that together created a story of who we are as humans in this planet. And that story left the planet behind. So there was no planetary flourishing anymore. There was just human material flourishing. And that is the story that needs to be changed, because not just the planet is obviously paying a price, but as Britt will tell you much better than I could, we are paying a price, because this story is making not just the planet sick, but is making us sick as well. And one of the items on Britt's list there, which looked like came out of my last book, it's kind of like almost freaky in a sense, is that the separation between human and nature has its roots on our forgetting our relationship to the planet as a sacred place. And this to me is the real big missing link on this new narrative of planetary flourishing, is that we need to resacralize our planet. And to do that, we have to rethink the way we relate to the planet in a much more spiritual, experiential way than we have been. Because, you know, we created all these cities, they're precisely the no nature areas, right? I mean, we put a little park here or there, but we're basically pushing ourselves away from where we came from the Gran Madre, as Ephraim would say. And that story needs to change.
Yes, absolutely. I love how we weave into each other's insights, moving, right, the narrative, transition the narrative from objectification to inter-subject relationships, right? That's also very, very, very deep in indigenous ontologies and epistemologies, sacralizing our planet and how we can dismantle. I always love to use nature analogies or metaphors. How can we compose those old narratives so that they can then give rise to new forms of life, new forms of relating, new forms of identity, in which we are now, again, part of a larger system, a larger community that is alive and sentient and responsive. How can we do that? And that's also the next question that I want us to move, because the beautiful aspect of planetary flourishing is that it centers on solutions, right? Not only seeing problems, but planting seeds as solutions that we can move forward. And so this is then the challenge that we have. How can we achieve planetary flourishing from each of your fields of experience and inquiry? What solutions would you mention that are more salient? Britt, please.
Thank you, Yuria. Well, there's so much to explore here, isn't there? But essentially, I think that there's a lot of conversation now about co-creation of solutions, centering the voices of the most historically marginalized, which is absolutely crucial. But I think we must be mindful that this is not about diversity of representation. Of course, we need that, but we need to go far beyond diversity of representation. This is not about the goal being to allow for people who haven't historically had seats at the table to simply have seats at the table, but to perhaps deconstruct the table completely and rebuild it together with new, fresh, and old worldviews, beliefs, traditions, and values that have been exiled and excluded and that need to be brought back center stage according to the authorship of those voices who are owned by forms of knowledge that are not upheld with these domination models that we've been talking about. And so for those of us who, let's say, are not Indigenous, what does that mean to be able to be part of that unfolding story in a meaningful way? I've been speaking with and trying to learn from Indigenous scholars on how to do that as a non-Indigenous person myself. And the wisdom I've been given is to not think about resurrection of knowledge from the past or a replacement of current knowledge systems, but rather how can one can intervene in creating a portfolio of knowledge, including modern science and traditional ways of knowing that are respectful about being mindful to not recenter one's own needs when creating these new pathways, especially if one is coming from, let's say, the kind of settler cultural identity such as my own as a white settler in Canada. So that's all, I think, an important aspect of my learnings in this space. But also, I think we really need to recognize that emotions in general are belittled. They're labeled as feminine. They're extracted as artifactual noise in places where they emerge. They're seen as problematic, as dangerous. And this is according to modernist norms, which are rational, right? Hyper-objective and so on. And yet right now we see a rise of a variety of distressing emotions because of the fact that we're rubbing up against planetary boundaries, and it's rolling back to be the #1 threat to global health for humans and other species. And so we need to really develop the muscle and the wisdom to integrate and learn from and get curious about these emotions rather than try to suppress them or beat them back or paper over them. And I'm talking about the profound grief and anxiety and dread and helplessness and so on that many people are voicing today because of the planetary health crisis. And these emotions have important things to teach us. They carry information about what we care about most, what we believe is under threat, and how we can mobilize ourselves towards fending off the danger. And so what are the contemplative practices, the self-care practices, the wisdom traditions, the collective resilience building tools that we can use to then allow us to sit with the uncertainty and the difficult emotions and then learn from their insights rather than be hijacked by the theme of modernity that tells us to feel shameful if we have these quote unquote negative emotions at all.
Yeah, absolutely, Debrid. Co-creation of this wide portfolio of wisdoms in plural, which we can use for adapting to a new era. So yeah, absolutely, not going to the past, but learning from it, and then being inspired by what kind of future we want to create, but for action right now, a collective action. And I think also emotions, and even though there's so much emphasis in negative emotions, there also has been such rise in emotions like Dacher Keltner's awe and wonder, that is moving us beyond the marvel of life, the beauty of being in a wonderful world that diminishes the self, right? The ecosystem, so that we turn to an ecosystem. So yes, please, Dr. Father Josh, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking us to the solutions. I would say two things, at the collective level and at the personal level. At the collective level, also building on what Brett was saying, I think it's time to create an alliance of people, alliance of ideas. So both at the level of, creating a movement of people, but also of ideas. But I would say really, it has to be bottom up. It has to be subaltern. Bottom up in the sense, the last couple of weeks ago, Oxfam came out with a report saying how the 1% of humanity, that's the super rich or, the elite, emit as much as 66% of humanity, the poor half, and almost as much as 66% of humanity. And at the COP and at all these meetings, is the 1% again going to decide how to manage our common home? Like, it's immoral. So I think we really need to reverse, allow women, youth, indigenous communities, NGOs to lead this movement. And also at the level of ideas, use indigenous knowledge, use subaltern knowledge. And I feel I should also express it, Yuri, it came to my mind more than once, the way you are conducting our discussion, and that's indigenous wisdom. And we know that the indigenous people, just hardly 5% of humanity, are still custodians of 80% of biodiversity. So it's not that just for fashion or we need to sit at the feet of indigenous communities. So that's a new alliance of knowledge, vision that we need to create. Then to the second point of at the personal level, I think we need to insist our universities, our educational system, you need to insist on ecological virtues against the vices of consumption, pride, and greed. All these vices that have brought us to this situation. We need ecological virtues: wonder, gratitude, praise, sobriety. But my favorite virtue is humility. And I think the greatest ecological sin is pride, our hubris. Marcel also mentioned that. But against that, we need humility. And I like, I'm a priest in the Bible, right? In the very first chapter of Genesis, we speak of Adamah, the soil from which Adamah was created. That, like Ephraim mentioned, the stardust we are. We come from the earth. And in Latin, is humus, is connected to humility. So I think until we regain this humility, that we return to the land, to Mother Earth, we won't solve the climate or all the crises that we are going through. So ecological virtues, especially humility, and this creating these alliances of people, but especially alliances of worldviews and ideas, especially subaltern indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Josh. And I'll bring us into, rather than sitting at the feet, let's all gather at the heart. Let's all gather together at the heart, because we have to move this together as a community, as a planetary community that takes in account different voices to cultivate these ecological virtues, as you mentioned. Please, Marcelo.
Yeah, so when it comes to action items and ways of actually enacting, I was thinking in very similar ways to what Father Josh mentioned, and also what Britt mentioned, which is the notion of co-creation, which I would call a confluence of knowledges. The notion that we grew up after the Enlightenment, and I put a lot of the blame on what's going on right now in the world with the notion of the Enlightenment, that reason, especially Western-centric, white male reason, is the only way to get to the truth. That is wrong in so many ways, but this is the way in which we have grown up. This is what we teach in the schools. And so if we really want to start to change the mindset, we have to think in very different ways, and we have to teach in very different ways. And we in academia, and not only at the university level, at the elementary school level, we have to tell the story of who we are in a way that embeds us in the story of the whole universe itself. So we are not the conquerors of the planet. We are stardust that has existed for billions of years, way before the planet Earth existed. And that, to me, elicits a sense of awe, a sense of belonging to something which is much deeper in time than our immediate greeds, of buying a new laptop or a new car. We are actually part of how the universe tells its own story. And why are we not telling the kids this in every classroom in the whole world, right? Because once you start to do that, you start to bring moral values. You both spoke of moral values. That's what's missing, is to have this notion of ecological ethics built into the way we think about who we are in the planet. And I am an optimist, and I actually think that there is a shift that is growing. I see it in conferences like this one. You and I were in a conference a few weeks ago that was very much in the same spirit of bringing together this different way of thinking of what it means to be human. And Father Joshua, right on with the humus and Adamah, which is just humus in Hebrew, really. The notion that that's where we came from. That's what we are. But we are something else because we are the bits of earth that can tell a story. And what we need to do right now is to tell a different story. And that is something we can do to our families, to our communities, in our churches, in our tribal gatherings, in our trans-tribal gatherings, because honestly, in my mind, there is one fundamental tribe, which is the human tribe. And once we start to look at the human tribe and not this or that, then we can start to tell a story of who we are in a very different way.
I love how you mention and go back to universal story. Like, let's listen to the universe tell her own story and be ourselves vessels through which she can act, through which she can love, through which she can emerge. And I want to end this panel, these beautiful voices gathering inquiries, emotion, embodiment, spiritual seeking, returning to love. And how much we need to return to love, loving the earth, loving life, loving each other in all our wide plurality, so that we can really start weaving these bonds, these ties that we may not see, but that we sense, that we embody, and then we bring to action. I want to thank all of you really profoundly, and I can't wait so we can one day be in the presence of each other and dance in life, in our home, as we surrender to the marvel awe of life. Thank you so much, Efrain. Thank you, Britt, Father Josh, dear Marcelo. Thank you so much. And thank you for Templeton for bringing us together. Back to you, Reddy.
Oh, thank you so very much, Yuria. And I felt I was nodding quite vigorously when you said you can't wait for us to be in the same space. And I was just imagining what it would have felt like had we been listening to each other and being physically present in each other to experience all this richness and fullness. I'm not in any way putting you under pressure, Templeton, and saying that you must do something to bring us together next year. But I think the magic was so palpable, the authenticity was so palpable, that if we can get goosebumps across geographies, across timelines, how stunning and impactful and poignant would it be if we were sharing the same space? And Yuria, I'm reflecting on your words. It's time to return to love, and you gave it such great meaning. Thank you so much. What an incredible final panel session today. And of course, moved by the poems. Efrain, thank you so much for generously pouring out your soul, as it were, in words. We're not done yet, though. In our final Flourishing in Action spotlight, we are proud to showcase the Planetary Guardians, an independent collective elevating science to make the planetary boundaries a measurement framework for the world. Let's take a look.
Humanity is at a critical juncture.
We're in the midst of this unprecedented global crisis. We're at risk of destabilizing the whole planet. But as science shows so far, the window is still open for us to have a future for humanity where we can remain within the planetary boundaries.
We have to understand what's going on and why. We are moving in the right direction. What the planetary boundaries will do is help us to really gather our strengths together. I want the G20, the G7, the UN Security Council to be guided by the planetary boundaries.
Nature is not limitless, and it's a living system. We know very well the value of a dead nature, unfortunately, but we haven't really appreciated the value of a living planet. And this is really what the planetary boundary does. It's that science that says the value of a living planet is incredible.
If we don't work together, if we don't cooperate, every country, every region, all of us, we will never achieve the objectives.
We are youth of extraordinary ambition and creativity and energy, but we cannot do what we want to do if we don't have our wisdom to guide us, experience to guide us.
We have thousands of years of wisdom from our ancestors. And imagine if we combine those best knowledge of indigenous peoples and the science and technology, we can have the best tools who can fix all the problems that we are facing now.
There are so many things that everybody and each of us can do.
We are all guardians. You are guardians. Your decision can help the planet to thrive.
We must all take our responsibility and feel not just the responsibility, but also the privilege of being guardians of our future.
We've got this. So let's walk on Earth like we love her, every step with the wisdom of our ancestors and the power and spirit and the guidance of future generations.
All right, we are really nearing the conclusion of the 2023 Global Flourishing Conference, and so thankful to each of you for sharing your time and energy with us over the past 2 days. We've seen some beautiful and memorable examples of flourishing in action and heard from a collection of renowned researchers and practitioners who are together advancing science and solutions for a flourishing world. So I've learned so much over the past 2 days and have been inspired by conversations and performances. It had the same impact on me last year. I found my moments, and I think I shared with some of the team that I found myself approaching work with that question: how do I create a flourishing culture so that it's like an instinct, it's like an impulse, it's like what you seek and do naturally. So this work in the field of flourishing, your work, is so critical for shaping a better future for us all. We still have so much to accomplish, of course, to see gains from the practices and innovations and the research that were presented here in the last 2 days. So what lies ahead? What's the next step? What's the next chapter? To take us to that next chapter, it is my pleasure to now introduce the incoming president for Templeton World Charity Foundation, Tina Cambridge. Please, thank you again, and join me in giving her a warm welcome. Tina.
Thank you, Reddy, for the introduction. Greetings to everybody. I'm Tina Cambridge, the new president and CEO of the Templeton World Charity Foundation. I know many of you through having worked with grantees over the past 5 years at the organization. It is my esteemed honor to lead the organization as we bid a grateful farewell to our outgoing president, Andrew Saracen, and as we consider what is most important for the bright future of the foundation. We are at an exciting moment of transition for our organization. As most of you know, Templeton World Charity Foundation is based in Nassau, Bahamas. I grew up here and have witnessed many transitions in our beautiful country. Just this year, the country celebrated the 50th year anniversary of independence. And it has also been 50 years since Sir John Templeton launched the Templeton Prize. Templeton World Charity Foundation itself is approaching the 10th year mark with its latest operational structure. When I joined the foundation, I was determined to pursue in earnest a lifelong goal of utilizing my skills for the betterment of a wider cause, to use the latter part of my career in a way that supported positive movement for mankind, to make a difference. Templeton World Charity has afforded me the opportunity to realize that potential. We have successfully touched the lives and careers of many through the careful fulfillment of the mission which Sir John left to our care, and this important work continues. But we recognize that as our grant portfolio continues to expand and we embrace grantees in new jurisdictions across the world, it is important for the foundation to ensure that we take the opportunity that this transition offers to strengthen all aspects of the operations of the foundation, thereby ensuring that we are at optimal strength, continuing to flourish ourselves while assisting others to flourish. TWCF continues to explore its place in the wider human flourishing space, never forgetting that Sir John's mandate intersects in many ways with this burgeoning subject. Across the past 2 days, we've had well over 1,500 people join us from countries all across the world. We are not surprised by this level of interest from a large diversity of geographies and disciplines. Human flourishing is different because it focuses on understanding not only who we are, but also our humanity. There are clearly many different viewpoints and definitions of what it means for humans to flourish. We have heard from a multitude of experts from varied disciplines espousing varied approaches for how humans can not only survive, but thrive, even amidst the levels of adversity we are facing today. Over the last 2 days, we've learned that in great adversity, people can attain health and well-being, but that they are not flourishing unless all of those around them are flourishing as well. We've learned that open models and transparency for how AI is built are important for flourishing so that we understand bias and disruption. We've learned that loneliness can be as dangerous to us as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and that mattering is a key to feeling less isolated and lonely. In our relationships, families, work, and friendships, feeling like we are valued and that we matter is key to feeling as if we belong, impacting our overall sense of well-being. We've also learned that a society that values us only for our productivity can lead to an alienated population. And lastly, but not least, we learned how creativity and adversity often go hand in hand. As an artist myself, I certainly concur that creativity can provide people with a sense of control over their lives, and that it can also help make sense of negative life events. These vital findings, insights, and discussions contribute to a body of research, tools, and policies that use science to consider how cultivating meaning and purpose, agency, close to social relationships, character virtues, among other spiritual capacities, can change our world to be more peaceful and prosperous for all. At the core of this scholarship is all of you, our current grantees, partners, and opinion leaders, and those we hope to work with in the future to advance the area of human flourishing. So John intended to increase the amount of what he called spiritual information by 100 times in a century. But very importantly, Sir John also recognized that we cannot do it alone. He believed in catalyzing exciting discoveries and working in partnerships with other funders and institutions to sustain investments and to fully realize their potential. We are grateful that many such partners were represented here in this conference over the past 2 days. We'd like to thank our sister organizations, John Templeton Foundation and Templeton Religion Trust, both represented on panels through individuals and ideas. We are grateful to Time Magazine and Lucas Whitman for working with us to organize the Human Flourishing and Artificial Intelligence panel, and the Fetzer Institute for a wonderful session on love and its role in flourishing. Several other foundations, such as the New Pluralists and the Ford Foundation, also helped shape panel discussions. With much thanks to all of our speakers, our moderators, and our MC broadcast journalist, Reddy Talabi. Thank you to the Programming Advisory Committee, led by its chairman and TWCF trustee, Bob Emmons, for many hours of dedication to ensure that the conference was well-defined and deeply thoughtful across many disciplines and approaches. Thank you to Global Health Strategies, our partner, for helping to build this conference, and Templeton World Charity's own board, tremendous staff and advisors for their work and support. In the coming months, we look forward to assessing the impact of the past 2 conferences and learning what this network of networks needs to better realize Sir John's vision. We invite you to remain a part of the journey and to find a space from which to lead within your own network, to support working in this area of interest, and to grow. Thank you to all those who already consider themselves a fundamental part of this exploration, and welcome to those who will join in the future. This marks the conclusion of the 2023 Global Flourishing Conference. We look forward to hearing from you in the surveys we will send out and by following the conference on social media platforms at Flourishing Conf. Videos from day 1 sessions are already posted on www.humanflourishing.org, and day 2 will be there by tomorrow if there is anything you missed or want to share. Registration will remain open for others to view the content from the conference, and don't forget to engage with posters in the Abstract Poster Hall, which will also continue to be available. To learn about upcoming funding opportunities and advances in human flourishing, please sign up for our newsletter on our website at templetonworldcharity.org. Enjoy the holiday season, and we look forward to learning how you have integrated something you learned here at the conference into work and your life in the near future. Thank you to everyone, and have a good day.